Hey, today we're looking at leadership skills and styles. What kind of leadership should we give, and what skills should we use when we are leading people? Leadership is influence. That's what John Maxwell said. Nothing less, nothing more. Let me share my screen with you. Oh boy, let's see this. Whoops. Uh-oh. Um, in the book in the 78th Psalm, it says, David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. And there are two aspects to leadership, integrity of heart and skillful hands. And I want to focus, first of all, on shepherding, because a lot of times people think of leadership as ranching versus shepherding, but shepherding is more gentle. It's loving people, it's leading people rather than driving people. Some people try to uh, to drive them, try to be cowboys. See, when I was a little kid, I loved playing cowboy, and so I thought when I became a pastor, I thought, man, I'd like to be a cowboy pastor, a rancher. But then I looked in the Bible to see what rancher, what it said about ranchers. There's nothing in there about that, just about shepherds. So I'm back to being a shepherd. Um, and David has said he shepherded them with integrity of heart and with skillful hands. And integrity of heart is what we've been talking about, like already in the class, the inner life of the leader, the making of a leader, just the internal qualities and the spiritual qualities. But there comes a point where we also need to develop our leadership skills and find out what our leadership voice is and then live into that. There's different aspects and different ways to approach leadership. Um, we have a tendency to focus either out of the head, the heart, or the hand. And when you're kind of a head leader, you're more intellectual. You lead with your ideas, your thoughts, and stuff like that. When you lead with the heart, you're more of an inspirational leader, leading with motivation. You're rallying the troops. When it's hand, you're an activist leader, and getting practical things done, and you're just leading the way. You're diving right into this. And so you can see, like, the more technical kind of leadership is where we combine hand and head, right? This would be strategic planning, databases, that kind of stuff. Spiritual leadership really is in the domain of head and heart, where we have good theology, but we live it out with our heart. I would say that goes into spiritual or servant leadership as well. Servant leadership is where it's a hand and heart together, where we're leading them, but we're leading them from underneath and serving. Um, so there are different theories of leadership, different ways that people have seen leadership and define what good leadership is. Uh, the first theory that goes way back to the ancient Greek philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, and those guys, is virtue theory. That great leaders are moral examples, that they embody the great virtues, stuff like fortitude and prudence and courage, that they embody that. And so just their embodying of these virtues inspires other people to follow after that. And that creates a virtuous society, is what the virtue theory is. Now, certainly spiritual leaders should have virtues, but there's more to it than that, more to it than that. Um, Now, another theory that came about a little bit after the Greeks and stuff was the great man or great woman theory, that some people are just born great. They're just born to be a great leader. They just naturally are hardwired to be an outstanding, amazing, incredible leader. And I've met some great men and some great women who are leaders. Um, but the question is, like are leaders born? Are leaders born? And the answer is yes, of course they are. Like no leader is hatched, right? There's no such thing as a hatched leader. We're all born. Um, but we might be born with different aptitudes that will really help us in our leadership. Like if you have a higher IQ or an EQ, emotional intelligence, um, or SQ, spiritual intelligence. You can discern things and see things and be more effective. Or maybe if you have higher energy, you can maybe lead. But it isn't just that a person's born. There's nurture and training and equipping that comes with that. The next theory is called the leadership trait theory. And there's different lists of leadership traits. They say these things are what make a really good leader. John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, for instance, these are leadership behaviors, but some of them kind of tie to the traits. Things like intelligence, people skills, curiosity, being competent, being decisive, being trustworthy, these are all leadership traits. And some would say that there are certain personalities that lend themselves more to effective leadership than others. And so, like if you use, say, your Myers-Briggs or the DISC profile, these personality tests, uh, they might help you to determine where you are in leadership. Now, my thought on that is God uses all different types of personalities for leadership. Now, there are certain traits that are helpful, like courage and compassion and stuff like that. But let's say that you are introverted. Um, does that mean you're not as going to be as good of a leader? No, no. What you want to do is use your introverted nature, but then say, what does it look like to be the most effective leader who happens to be an introvert, right? So if you are an INFP, for instance, in introvert, intuitive, feeler, perceiver, you're going to lead differently than an ESTJ, the extrovert, sensor, thinker, judger. If you've never taken this test, just go online and Google Myers-Briggs and see what you are. It's kind of the standard, about how you operate and stuff like that. Another profile similar to that is called the DISC profile, which measures your dominance, your influence, your conscientiousness, and your steadiness, right? So the dominant is the driver, the influence is the expressive, the conscientious is the analytical, the steadiness is the amiable, get along just fine. So on the left-hand side of the screen, this task-oriented, the right-hand side is people-oriented. At the top is fast pace, at the bottom is slow pace. So you got to find what your energy is, whether you're task oriented or people oriented. Now, once again, it isn't like dominant people automatically make the better leaders. A lot of times, though, if you're starting a new charge or you're going into a difficult thing, having that high D or high I is helpful in that. But let's say you're a C or an S leader. I mean, God has a great place for you in leadership too. You just come along, in a different kind of way. A lot of times, say the C and S leaders are more in a support role. Um, or let's say you happen to be the lead pastor and you're the C and an S, then what you need to do is work on some of the D and the I. Now, by the way, the I and the D, they need to work on the C and the S stuff too, right? So we want to be well-rounded. I think Jesus was a little bit of all four. So with leadership skills, the skill theory, there's certain skills that we have. There's technical skills, there's relational skills, there's conceptual skills, being able to comprehend and think things. And so if you can find that balance between tasks and relationships, that's really the sweet spot of leadership. So where if you happen to be relational, you probably need to work harder on the courage and confrontational side and getting the task done. If you're more task oriented, you need to slow it down and be a little more relational in your dynamic of it. To find that sweet spot, whichever one you are, just be that. And make that your major, but pick up the other one as your minor. That's what I would say. Now, speaking of leadership skills, the Dunning and Kruger, they did some analysis of competence. And basically, what they found is that people at first, they don't have any knowledge at all. They gain a little bit of knowledge. He's getting a little bit, and they gain a lot of confidence with a little bit of knowledge. My students do that a lot. My college students, they think they know more than they know until they graduate or whatever. They get out there, they get some experience, and then they crash because they realize, well, I don't know anything. I thought I knew everything. Now I know nothing. Oh man, this is awful. This is awful. And so the real learning happens right in here at the Valley of Despair, where you begin to apply the stuff that you learn over here on the left-hand side, and that becomes wisdom. And then you climb the long slope of enlightenment till eventually you become a guru. Um, let's say that you have somebody working with you, and you're giving them responsibility, and they just seem like they are just eager to go and they're ready to go. They they're just climbing Mount Stupid right now. They probably are going to need some guidance, but you probably can't teach them much until they run into a bump. Like I had a student several years ago that was just so confident, and he had a lot of skill. He was very confident in that skill. And I remember a great leader came and visited my class, and afterwards he had talked to that student. He says, "You know that he's going to do really great after he gets knocked on his rear end a few times." That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So now let's say how ready are they? They may not nearly be as ready as they think they are, right? Um, so let's say that they're unable and they're insecure, they're unwilling, they can't do it and they don't want to do it, then you're going to have to really direct that from the leader. They're not going to be self-motivated. You have to do the motivating for them, lighting a fire under them. If if they're unable, but they're confident, or they're willing, but they don't quite have the skill, you're still going to need to really be focusing in on that to give strong leadership to it, particularly if they think they know more than they know. If they're able, but they're insecure, you want to hand it to them. Now, be in the wings, but stretch them and give them more than what they think they can do, right? Now, if they're able and they're confident, just give it to them all the way. I mean, just let them have it. Let them fly. Let them fly. And this is kind of the way, like if they're incompetent and unwilling, you got to tell them what to do. If they're incompetent but they're willing, you need to sell it on them so they can actually gain the confidence. You need to sell themselves that they're able to do it. Uh, if they're competent but unwilling, then you need to help to invite them into the process so they help create it so that the people support what they create, right? So you bring them into the participation rather than just doing it for planning something, say, I want you to do it now, right? And then if they're competent and willing, you just give it away and let them fly. Let them run with that. Now, there's different styles of leadership too. There's democratic leadership where we kind of take votes and let's all see what everybody. This person leads by consensus. The autocratic is where this is what we're going to do. The buck stops here, right? The transactional is I'm going to do this for you if you do this for me. Uh, Transformational is kind of like the inspiring coach kind of person, that rises to give some challenge, but rises to the challenge and tries to bring them along in a team. It's not a vote really; they're still the leader, but they do it through inspirational leadership. And then laissez-faire, this is the one where the person just says, go for it, and they're just kind of in the back and just letting it play out, right? They're really not leading at all, actually. They're just kind of going along for the ride. So, one question you want to look at as you're leading is like, where is the concern for people and what is the concern for production, right? So, and your style of leadership will reflect your concern for people and your concern for production. All right. So if you don't care about the people, um, but you really care about production. So you're driving people. You're punishing people that don't meet the quota. You're shaming people if they don't get the job done. You're calling them to task on everything. That's that producer parish management. If you don't care for people and you don't care for production either, you're just kind of apathetic. I mean, there are a lot of bosses. I was at a restaurant the other day that had to have been led by one of those guys. If you love people a lot, but you don't really care that much about production, then you just have a country club. You're going to do a nice social club and everybody will just really enjoy that. But if you have high care for people and high concern for production, then you're going to need to manage the team. You're going to be like a coach of a team. And a lot of people just end up in the middle of the road of this stuff. What I would suggest is up and to the right is the strongest by far, the best kind of, whoops, leadership. So we have like the coaching leader says, try this. The visionary leader says, come with me. We're gonna go do something. We're gonna take the hill together, right? Let's go for it. Charge. The commanding leader says, well, I'm gonna do it. You better, here's what you need to do, right? You do this or else. The affiliative leader cares about the team so much that whatever the people want, that's what I want to do. I'm going to care about my people. My people are much more important to me than the results. And the commanding leader, the results are more important than the people. See that? The Democratic, that's where they say, okay, guys, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And the pace setter is the high energy driver. Let's go, 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 go. Now, usually we're a blend of these, and there are different circumstances that require different approaches to that. And so, so that's why, like, at certain times, maybe a church or a ministry will need a visionary leader. But then after a while, they're going to need somebody that's more like an affiliative leader to bring healing or something like that if things go off the rails. The contingency theory is this, that a changing situation needs a different leader. That's why football teams fire their coach when they have a losing season. They use the contingency theory. So you're going to lead contingent upon you succeeding. And if you don't do it, you don't get the results, then you're fired, and then we'll do something else. I don't recommend that approach. I like situational leaders, like Jordan Love, the quarterback of the Packers. He reads the defense and he says, "Uh-oh, the play we called, they're going to clobber us if we go on that." So he calls it right at the line. He calls something else because he sees that that's the way that needs to be done. If you can figure that out and you're able to actually make adjustments and call it at the line rather than sticking with the plan, if you know it's not going to work, then that means you're a situational leader, and that's the best kind of leadership, I think, is to be flexible with that. And to be, so that way you're able to adapt to the need at the moment. Transactional leadership is either leading with carrots or sticks, right? This is the commanding leader that does this, and they're usually with the say, if you do this and this, I'm going to give you a raise, right? And if you don't do this or this, then your job is in jeopardy. I mean, like, so it's either carrots or sticks, threats of punishment or promises of reward, incentives and stuff. That's kind of a shallow leadership. People that are motivated by outside interests alone usually aren't going to last very long. Now, you might have staff or somebody that's on your team that actually needs that because they are unmotivated and unwilling. But I would suggest if you have to do that for a long period of time, then you need to get them off the team and get somebody else in there that doesn't need to be whacked with a stick or given a carrot. The leader member exchange theory is basically this: I'm going to do good stuff for you if you do good stuff for me. You get to feel like you belong, but you're going to be paying a price of leadership in my team. You're going to have to work with me and stuff like that. This is the reason why a lot of people, they'll volunteer at church so they can feel included. And they do a lot of work for you here because they become a part of the circle of inclusion because they're there with you. They're working hard. Now, you got to reward those people for that if that's what you're doing with the leadership exchange. But these people are left out because they haven't given the dues. They haven't paid the dues to do that. Um, there is something to that. I think you have to be careful about that to not make your leadership transactional, because if that's the case, it becomes really easy to use people and manipulate people, and we don't want to do that. My favorite style, though, what I tend to lead by is called transformational leadership theory. I want to be the model that my team needs. I want to show the way, right? John Maxwell says a leader shows the way, goes the way, knows the way. Um, I want to share my vision and inspire my followers, not by guilt and shame and whatever, not by pointing out all the fears and the flaws, but just by painting a better picture, right? Um, I want people to be creative and ask good questions and challenge their assumptions and to invest in each individual person, individualized consideration. What do they need? And then try to give that to them. Now, one issue of that is if you're leading a large team and you have a huge span of control of people that you're leading, it's harder to give that individualized consideration. That's the reason why a span of control of 1 to 4 is ideal, where you have like 4 people that would be answering to you, and then those 4 have 4, and those 4 have 4, so you don't have more than 4. Now, most of the time that doesn't work, but that's a goal. Servant leadership, I like this when you talk about the circle of inclusion. Basically, it's this: I'm just going to include everybody. Instead of the leader being at the top, and the management up close there and all, it flips the whole thing upside down so that the people, the customers, or these would be like the people that just attend your church or just the constituents or whatever that is, the people that are just sitting there, they're at the top, right? And we are all here to serve them. And so if that's the case, then like for instance the leader, they would get the worst parking space in the whole parking lot. They don't get the best one that says reserved for the pastor. No, the pastor goes far, far away. I was at a church where the best parking lot was reserved for the pastor. And I thought, they messed up. They don't get servant leadership. The pastor's parking spot should be across the way, a half a mile away, so that you should put visitor there, right? That's where that parking spot should be. Servant leadership, downward mobility. And I think that Jesus modeled that when he picked up the towel. Shared leadership is one other model where instead of hierarchical, like up and down, instead of that, it's more about horizontal, right? Where that we are all on the team together. It's lateral. And so to do that, your power has to go down. Like the person in charge has to give up power. They have to relinquish power. But that can only happen with a high level of trust and very large levels of communication. And so, like, if the trust evaporates or the communication breaks down, then this kind of leadership doesn't work at all. And I've seen it backfire. I've experienced that. And so you have to really watch and make sure that the team is people that you can trust. Now, people a lot of times they want to be shared in the leadership. They want to have that. Like if they're in the team, they want the top leader to share with them. But they don't want to share all of it. They don't want to share the outcomes of the responsibility. They just want to have a say in the vision. And I would suggest that if you do shared leadership, if you give leadership away and you become more horizontal in the approach, that then they need to help own the vision so they can create the vision. They have to create with you, but they also take responsibility for the outcomes. So whoever creates the vision is the one that should be responsible for the outcomes. And if you divide that out, then you kind of messed it up, all right? Um, so it like in the book of Acts, I don't think if you can see this or not. It's not showing up best on my screen, but basically it says, "Seem good to the Holy Spirit and to us." Um, like the Holy Spirit and to us in the Jerusalem Council, and it's the usness of this. I mean, sometimes the corporate body, they can give real wisdom to things. We can listen to them. You should listen to your people. Of course. There is no I in team. Of course, there is no we in chocolate either. Now, people have said it's lonely at the top, but those who've said that haven't really led with a good team. Yes, there are certain things that only the leader can do, and when you are the leader at the top, you're going to carry burdens that nobody else carries. Nobody else understands. If you're on staff, for instance, you don't understand what it is until you're the one that carries the full weight of the responsibility. However, if it's lonely at the top, then invite people up to the top with you. Um, you can't sing harmony alone. You can only sing one note by yourself, but you can have a whole choir singing beautiful harmonies if you bring other people along and they're able to sing the same song. Make sure that everybody's singing the same tune, right? And in tune, you got to do that. That's the leadership. Maybe you're the conductor helping people sing in harmony with each other. Together, everyone achieves more. Patrick Lencioni talks about this working with people and teams and stuff like that. And he wrote a fabulous book called The Dysfunctions of a Team, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And like the absence of trust, the fear of conflict, the lack of commitment, the avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. This is true. This is really true. And I would suggest that you look at your team and say, okay, what area would might we be dysfunctional, or what's our weakest area here? What I found a lot of times is that people they fear conflict, so they don't want to bring up and have a hard conversation. Or there are some members of the team that aren't carrying their weight of things. People don't want to be held accountable. They'll run, they'll flee from accountability like rats from a burning barn. And they don't, and the bottom line is they don't trust each other, right? So this actually builds on each other. The results really, if you're looking for results, you want to go down and foster a climate of trust. I think that's the first step. So these actually stair step on top of each other. Um, so part of this with the team is delegating and getting people to do the stuff. The Apostle Paul says, "In the things you've heard in me, say in the presence of many witnesses, trust these to reliable people who will be qualified to teach others." So I give it to you, and then you're going to give it to others. That's multiplication rather than addition, and that's the reason why I'm a professor today because of the multiplication factor. That's the whole reason why I'm giving this last quarter of my football game to the equipping of future ministers because of this very thing. I want to give it to faithful, reliable people who will carry it. That brings us to the art of delegation, getting things done through other people. You ever heard it said, if you want to get something done right, you got to do it like yourself. Is what they say. But really, it should be they do it through others because the best way to do it is to do it through others. The highest form of leadership is getting it done through others. If you're doing it all, you're not leading, you are running a show and they're all watching you. So there's different levels of leadership. Like there's like being a leader of followers. And your followers are just following you around everywhere. And I suppose that's kind of preschool leadership. And then another level would be leaders of leaders, where you're actually raising up leaders and letting them lead. And even better than that is leaders of leaders of leaders, right? And if you get to that level, then you're really clicking. But all of that requires delegation. Delegation. I remember I did a banquet one time early on in my ministry. We were doing a building fund thing and we wanted to raise money for a new building and I worked really hard to build a team of leaders. I had the youth group that decorated. I had the best cook in town that create a feast and had I had several women of the church that actually came in the kitchen. They were best cooks and they just brought all kinds of dishes and things like that. I just had all kinds of delicious, wonderful food for everybody. I had some music, wonderful music, inspiration. We had like a pamphlet that we made for everybody that was very inspiring. And I recruited a couple of people to give good testimonies. And it was a wonderful night. We raised all the money we needed. It was fantastic. I was feeling really good about it at the end of the day. And then John came up to me, and John was my quality control mechanism. Now, every church has one, a quality control department. People pay companies pay big bucks for that. I got it for free. John was my quality control. Anyway, he came up to me, and he's an older guy, retired. He points his bony finger right in my chest, and he says, "Don't you ever do that again." And I said, "Do what?" And he says, "You didn't delegate." And I said, "Oh, wait a minute. Were we at the same banquet?" Good grief. I had like probably 75 people working. I had the youth group, I had the music, I had the cooks, he says, "Exactly. I had." He said, "I saw what you were doing over the last several months. You were just consumed by putting this banquet together, and you were abandoning your main pastoral tasks of being the spiritual leader of the church." He said, "What you should have done is given that entire banquet to somebody else and let them run with it. You didn't delegate." And that day I learned a big lesson. John taught me a lesson. There's a big difference um, between between delegating tasks and delegating responsibilities with true delegating. Delegating is not delegating tasks or responsibilities, it's delegating authority. And so you give authority, you let them make the decision. And when you do that, that is delegating. Up till that point, you've not delegated. You're just equipping people to get them ready to delegate, right? Um, it's the delegation of authority. And this is the Jethro principle from Exodus chapter 18, where Moses is just wearing himself out, making decisions for everybody. And Jethro says, "What?" This is his father-in-law. He says, "What you're doing isn't good. Get some guys, some people you trust. Delegate this to them. And if they can't handle it, then get it to you." That's just a basic principle of delegation, distributing the load. Same thing in Acts chapter 6 with the apostles, where the Greeks were being neglected, and they said, "It's not good. We're too busy doing the banquet. And what we need to be doing is about prayer, ministry of the word, and ministry of equipping." That would be delegating. So they ended up with these guys, these seven deacons, full of reputation, full of the Holy Spirit, full of wisdom. Got to make sure you have the right people with you in this thing. You have yeah, Stephen and Philip and Prochorus and Timon and Pumbaa and Nicholas of Antioch. And these guys actually did the stuff, right? They did the stuff. They could make their own decisions. They delegated. Keith Drury said, "If you don't learn to delegate by the age of 40, you probably won't ever have to." Now, when I first started as a pastor, about probably about a year or so into it, I felt overwhelmed. And so I made an organizational chart. And this is my organizational chart that I made. And I don't know if you can see, it's the most, it looks like spaghetti. But all of the lines went back to here that says pastor. All these lines went back to me, and I realized that I had way too many things that I was responsible for. And so I had a friend who kind of coached me in this, and he said, "Hey, this is not good. This is way too messed up. You need a clearer, simpler life structure, leadership system." And so basically said, "Do this." I don't know if you can see this or not on the screen. It's not showing up correctly on my, but basically you make a piece of paper, put different lines. Now, in the first column, you have tasks. So what are all the tasks in your area? So let's say that you're the pastor of a church, you write up every single task that's in that church. Or if you're a head of a youth group, then every task in that youth group, or whatever it is, whatever you're in charge of, all of the tasks. It's going to take you a while. You're going to have a whole bunch of them. The second line is who's responsible to do those tasks. And then the third question is, and who is that person responsible to? All right. And then the question is, and who's that person responsible to? Right? So the tasks, who does it, who are they responsible to, and who are they responsible to? Now, what I found back in the old days when I whoops, oh, There it is. When it was like this, um, I was in the first column of just about everything. And the ones that I wasn't here, I was definitely here. And so what I learned to do as my church grew and I had to organize it in a more effective kind of way, I started working myself to the right of these things. Now there's certain things that only I could do, and I want to do those. So I was the primary preacher, for instance, and I led the board meetings. I really needed to do those things. Those are really important. But there were other things that other people could do, and they could do it effectively. And so when I'm doing them, I'm just robbing them of the joy and the delight of serving the Lord. So when you are delegating, you want to define reality. Okay, what's going on here? What are your A things? What's your task? What is your who's responsible? Who's responsible to? And then you make a map of all this, kind of like what I did with my little kind of thing, um, and then start planning ahead. So, for instance, let's say that you're the one responsible for Vacation Bible School. Okay, you can recruit like every single thing, and you can plan the snacks, and you can plan the crafts, and you can plan the project, or you can put like a person in charge of snacks, a person in charge of crafts, a person in charge of small groups. You can just do that. Have big category people, right? And you could even consolidate some of them and then have somebody oversee that. Like that would be way. But the only way you're going to do that is if you plan ahead. So like you're not going to get that done even 2 or 3 months, even 4 months ahead of time. You want to go about 6 months out or more to recruit them then, because 6 months out they'll say yes. 1 month out they'll say no. So you recruit like 6 months, 4 months at the max ahead. Like this is the reason why so many pastors don't delegate is because they don't plan. They don't think ahead enough. And then use the 75% rule. If they're able to do it at 75%, which is like a C, right? If they can get a good solid C doing this stuff, then do it unless that thing is vitally important and it has to be an A. Everything doesn't have to be an A. If they can do it 75% as effectively as you can, then let them do it. Because really, you're probably an A plus 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 plus. So the 75% is still an A. And what happens then is you can only do so many things, so you're limited by your time. But once you get people out there doing it, let's say that you have 10 people doing things at 80. Okay, now you got 800. 10 times 80, 800, right? Um, Whereas if you had your one thing or two things, you got 200. So it's way better to have 800 than 200. So you want to use the five-step turnover plan, which is I do it, you watch, I do it, you help, we do it together, you do it, I help, you do it, I watch. This is where the delegation happens, right? 4 and 5 is where they do the stuff. And then they have the authority. They get to make the decisions, and you're not like micromanaging. By the way, micromanaging is good. It's important if things aren't going well. If things aren't going well and you're the leader, you have the responsibility to micromanage it until it gets going well. And if it's not going well, you have to do something, right? And so that then needs to be micromanaged. So if you have to micromanage things all the time, it either means that you're over controlling or that you have a team that is dysfunctional and they need to probably not be there doing that stuff. Everything goes on the speed of trust. Trust is a process. So, like if you're going to give something to somebody and you're not sure, give them something small first and see how they do with it. If they do great with it, then give them more. If they do great with that, give them more. Don't just give them the whole thing right up front, because sometimes that people get too much too fast and then they cave in and so more the more that they gain experience through the little things, the scripture says, "Be faithful with the little, you get much to be faithful in." One thing about delegation, it's the same as plumbing. It shouldn't go backwards. So, like if delegation is flowing backwards, you have some plumbing issues you probably need to take care of. And you want to get the right people on the bus. This is a part of delegation too, making sure that you have the right people in the right spots on the bus. So if somebody doesn't have their driver's license, they probably shouldn't be driving the bus, right? Um, but if somebody's the mechanic, have that person be fixing things, not somebody that doesn't know anything about that. Get the right people on the bus. What kind of people should you be looking for when you're recruiting? Oh, and by the way, I would say, like for the children's pastors and district superintendents too, I would say 80% of their job is recruiting. That really is. It's 80% recruiting. And if they don't take it that way, 80% recruitment, then they're going to be doing all the stuff themselves. And and then that's kindergarten leadership, right? You're leading followers rather than leaders of leaders, have leaders, right? So look for people who are faithful, available, spiritual, and teachable. So definitely teachable. They have to have a humble heart. Don't worry about the skill first. Look at whether or not they'd be willing to learn, because usually, like, this is what we hope we're going to get, and this is what we get. And so, but hey, if God sends them, then we can use them with whatever gift or ability that they have. So good leadership is not about being the best; it's making everybody on your team better. And when you're recruiting, recruit for these three things: character, competence, and chemistry. Um, Now, competence, that's the skill, and that would be your probably least important of the three. It's important. You don't want to hire somebody that's incompetent, or even with volunteers, you don't want somebody that's incompetent leading your youth group. But it's even more important that they have good character and also that you can get along with each other. Do you like each other? Can you have good chemistry? Like if you're wondering whether or not to bring somebody on your team, one question is, would I enjoy an evening out with this person? Would I enjoy going on a vacation or a road trip with this person? If not, maybe you ought to think twice before you bring them on and have to work with them every day. So I've heard it said like that. I think it was Peter Drucker that said the difference between good companies. Hey, that makes me up here. I'm running. Ah. Good companies and bad companies is training, is training. But I would like to suggest that it's development. The difference between good companies and bad companies, good churches and bad churches, good ministries and bad ministries is development, training and development. We put them both together. You train skills. So people learn the skills, they learn what to do. But what you develop are values, attitudes, and perspectives. And so, like, that's why we take people to conferences and stuff, not to learn skills so much, but to help them capture a vision, to capture a heartbeat. This is intangible, the developmental side of things, but the skill part of that can come. You can do that pretty easily. Uh, my son's father-in-law worked for the Hearst Corporation. He's the head of tourism for the upstate of New York now. And what he tells his team is this: out is up, out is up. And what does that mean? That that if the leaders make decisions that only benefit the leaders or that primarily benefit the leaders, like internally, then that's going to take everything down. Like if you make the decision based on the convenience of the team, it's going to go down. And what he found, like as he led this large sales force of the largest conglomerate of newspapers in the world, that for a while they were making decisions that only benefited the sales force. It was most beneficial to them, and their sales plummeted because they didn't do what was best for their customers. The question is, what are we going to do that's best for the people that we're serving? And even if it puts us out a little bit, we're going to do that anyway because out is up. We focus outward rather than inward, rather than being selfish. We want to be givers. And when we're givers, out, that brings the whole thing up. It lifts it up. We develop by modeling too. We want to show the way. We want others to see how it's done, and we live that out. When you're reviewing people, to decide whether they should stay or not, or whether you should bring them on your team, I think you should ask these three questions. Are they willing? Do they have enough energy? And do they have the capacity? Are they willing? Do they have the energy? Do they have the capacity? Now, they probably are the ones to determine whether they're willing. Whoops. Oh no. Um, there we are. They determine whether they're willing. And they might even determine whether they have the energy to do it. They probably are not the ones to determine whether they have the capacity. You're the one that determines that. So they might think they have the capacity, but if they don't, then you have to decide, is this okay? They're willing and they got the energy. I don't think they got the capacity. Can they grow? And maybe they can. If they're humble, they can grow. If they're hungry enough, maybe they can do that as long as they have enough energy. But if they don't have the capacity, and they don't have the willingness or the energy to rise to what is needed, then for heaven's sakes, don't bring them on the team. And if they're on the team and and you need to go to the next level, and they don't have the capacity, but they're not willing to expend the energy, and they're not willing to do whatever it takes to get there, then the kindest thing you could do is help them find another team to be a part of. Give them feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions, Ken Blanchard said. Well, what about bad apples? Let's say that they aren't willing and they're just kind of demoralizing the team and the whole thing's going down. What do you do with somebody when it's not working? And I would suggest one of four things. And you start with the first one. The first question is, can we tolerate this? You know, a lot of times people tolerate way too much too long. I know I did as a pastor. I tolerated stuff I shouldn't have tolerated, even though it was intolerable, I still tolerated it. So don't go too long on toleration, right? Um, if you're bringing a team on to do stuff, and those things that they do is supposed to get results, and the results are supposed to be to multiply disciples and help people love God and love others. And if they're not doing that, then we got to figure this out. Particularly if they're paid staff, you're not paying them just to give them a job. You're paying them to do something, and if it's not working, then you got to do something about it, right? So let's say it's not working and you can't tolerate it. We got to fix this. First question is, do they need to be trained? Maybe they just need to have some training. Maybe they just don't know what to do. And if you can show them what to do and help them get the training using that five-step turnover plan, or put somebody in that's competent, give them some coaching or something like that, maybe that'll work. And that's your first option. So maybe try that first if you haven't trained them. But if you train them, it still doesn't work, then maybe transfer them. Maybe the reason why it's not working is they're in the wrong spot. They're on the wrong seat on the bus. So, like for instance, if you have a worship leader and they can't sing, that's probably not a good thing to have, a song leader can't sing. You got to have somebody that can carry a tune in a fruit basket. So you transfer that person back to the soundboard and put somebody up front who can sing. Now that might hurt somebody's feelings or whatever, but it helps. If you have something worthwhile that they're gifted at and you can transfer them over, a lot of times they don't feel that as a demotion. They see it as fulfilling a need, and actually it's more fulfilling. If you're frustrated, they're probably frustrated too. And there are times where you have to just terminate them. Now, I don't mean, terminate them. Bang, bang. What I mean is you just kind of call it and say, you know what, this isn't working. I'm sorry. It's just not working, and we're going to have to do something else here. That's hard, but I tell you what, if you let it go, and it should be, and particularly if it's a character issue, and you just keep on covering it up and tolerating and tolerating and tolerating, it's going to build and it's going to blow up eventually. So the quicker you can handle that, the better. Don't. It's like a skunk underneath the dead skunk underneath your bed. It's not going to get any better by hiding it under there, right? Leaving it under there. Um, Now think about like Nehemiah, who builds the wall. Boy, what does he do in the book of Nehemiah? He recruits people together, and each takes responsibility for their own part. He delegates it to them. Casts a vision for them, and they all go to work protecting their family. They do the part of the wall by their house. There's opposition that comes up, but he doesn't let the opposition win because he's on a mission, and you can do that too. There are a few who are extra grace required. They just need a little bit of extra grace. And I call those EGRs. And God puts those in there just to sharpen you and hone your people skills, right? He's teaching you grace, teaching you patience, teaching you into that kind of deal. Well, hey, I'm gonna stop the share here. I know I've gone long enough. Hopefully, this has been helpful for you, just to have a few insights and tidbits into leadership. God bless. Goodbye.